All right, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad we got in.
So as always, we're here to take this pile of source material you've provided and, well, basically pull out the core stuff for you.
Yeah, cut through the noise, get you right to the heart of it, the essential knowledge.
Exactly, the ultimate shortcut. And today we're focusing on specialized forces. But interestingly, not so much on creating them from scratch. We're digging into something maybe harder, refinement. Taking existing battle-tested soldiers and pushing them past, well, everything.
Taking the best and making them something else.
Precisely. And we're plunging headfirst into the lore, the legacy of the orbital drop shock troopers, the ODSTs.
Okay, so think of this deep dive as your mission briefing. We've got these pretty exhaustive excerpts from a document called Blood and Backbone, the Marine Legacy of the ODST.
Right.
Our job here, for you, is to really unpack where they come from, institutionally speaking, their training, which is notoriously brutal, and we'll get into why, and the unique culture around the ODSTs.
And crucially, we're keeping the focus tight on one core idea running through all this material.
Yeah, the absolute bedrock. Their link, their foundational connection to the UNSC Marine Corps. It's inescapable in the sources.
And these sources, just so you know what we're working with, they're very specific. We're talking policy manuals, doctrinal blueprints, internal documents.
Yeah, this isn't like a public history book.
No, not at all. This is the internal wiring diagram, how these warfighters are built. It details not just what they do, but crucially, where that capability originates.
And the central idea, the main thesis of this whole document, it just hits you right away in the first section, basically.
Which is?
That the ODST Corps, fundamentally, it's an engine of refinement. That's its purpose. It takes Marines, combat-tested Marines, and puts them through a process, a system designed to mold them into these, well, self-sufficient shock troops.
Operatives who can function when everything else has gone silent.
Exactly, in a tactical vacuum. And the source material doesn't just state this as a fact, like they come from Marines. It frames it really strongly. It calls this mandatory link a declaration of lineage.
A declaration of lineage. I like that. It's got weight. Okay, let's dive into that right away. Segment 1, the core foundation. Marines as the unbreakable backbone.
All right.
Because you're right, the source material, it doesn't pull any punches here. Section 2, blood and backbone, it lays it out like prime directive stuff. Every single ODST,
Every single one,
starts life as a Marine. That's the baseline. You can't, skip that class.
Nope, no shortcuts there. Which means the entire philosophical framework, the tactical approach, it all comes from Marine Corps doctrine, full stop.
And that foundation, it's built on the Marine ethos, right? The source mentions honor, courage, commitment.
Absolutely. The document hammers this home. It calls this the unbreakable backbone. It's what supports everything else the ODSTs eventually became. You can teach someone the mechanics of dropping from orbit.
Sure, the technical skills.
But you can't just inject that deep-seated institutional grit. That discipline has to be there before they even think about volunteering for the ODST selection. It has to be baked in.
Okay, but let's give that some context. Why the Marines specifically? What is it about the UNSC Marine Corps that makes that foundation so non-negotiable for creating ODSTs?
That's a key question. And the source material, it assigns this incredible weight to the Corps. It explicitly calls the UNSC Marine Corps the heart of humanity's ground warfare effort.
The heart, that's significant.
Yeah. They're framed as the force that holds the standard when everything else is buckling. And the document connects this directly to their history, their track record.
It mentions specific battlefields, doesn't it? From the sands of Mars to the ash of Harvest.
It does. And those aren't just, cool-sounding names. Mars, Harvest. These were conflicts on an almost unimaginable scale.
Places where entire campaigns hinged on Marine tenacity.
Exactly. So that history, that performance record, it establishes the baseline. The ODST program isn't just looking for good soldiers. They're starting with Marines who have already excelled within a force known for surviving, well, literal planetary disasters and system-wide collapses.
Right. If just being Marine means you likely survived places like Harvest, which the lore tells us was just horrific, an absolute meat grinder, then the pool of Marines the ODSTs are even looking at is already the elite, the top fraction of a percent.
Precisely. The ODST program isn't designed for basic training. It assumes that baseline competence, that baseline toughness, is already there. They're looking for something more.
So given that incredibly high bar, what are the specific traits, beyond just good combat record? What psychological markers does the ODST program zero in on when selecting a Marine candidate?
They're looking for things that hint at the ability to function alone. Superior combat performance, yeah, that gets you in the door. It's the entry fee, like you said.
But not the deciding factor.
No. The non-negotiables, according to the source, are traits essential to what it calls the drop trooper's creed. Things like initiative, composure under extreme pressure,
Yeah.
and maybe, most importantly, tactical self-reliance.
Initiative and self-reliance. Let's unpack those. Because standard Marine doctrine, while emphasizing initiative, is still heavily built on unit cohesion and following orders, right?
Generally, yes. Structured formations, clear chain of command.
So an ODST candidate needs to show they can operate outside that immediate structure even before the ODST training. How does that manifest? What does the program look for in their Marine service record?
The document gives examples. It often points to moments where the system broke down, like communications go out during a firefight. The typical response might be to hold position, wait for orders.
Right, consolidate, wait for the lieutenant.
Yeah. But the potential ODST candidate, they're the Marine who, in that chaos, doesn't freeze. They immediately assess, okay, what's the biggest threat now? What's the next logical step based on the original mission and our doctrine? And they act.
They secure a flank, maybe push towards the objective using their training, essentially self-authorizing based on the situation.
Exactly. They take initiative grounded in solid doctrine. And composure under pressure, in this context, isn't just not freaking out. It's the ability to make complex, layered tactical decisions while, everything's exploding around you. Maximal duress.
Okay, so that really sets up this core tension. They share the same language, the same basic discipline, the same respect for the chain of command when it is functioning.
A shared mindset, absolutely, a shared culture.
But their ultimate operational purpose is fundamentally different.
This is the pivot point in the source material. Standard Marines fight as part of a larger structured machine. Their strength is coordination, mass fire, the guarantee of support lines.
There's a system behind them.
Right. The ODST, though, the document says they have to be elevated through endurance and willpower. They aren't just part of the continuity. Often, they're the continuity. Their whole job is to find order, create effectiveness when dropped into total chaos, into the unknown where other structures have failed.
So if comms die for a regular Marine unit, they fall back on standard operating procedures, hold patterns, things like that.
Typically, yes. Wait for contact to be reestablished.
But if comms die for an ODST unit,
They become the highest functioning command element in that area of operations. They're expected to continue the mission, adapt, overcome, based on their training and initiative.
so it's less about skill level, perhaps, and more about institutional trust. The Marine Corps trusts the ODST to uphold the mission and doctrine, even when totally cut off.
That's a great way to put it. Operational trust. And this is why the source insists that pride in their Marine roots remains so visible. You see it in their posture, how they carry themselves.
Still rigid, formal.
Yeah, adherence to formal military speech patterns. And that unspoken bond, the camaraderie built on shared hardship and, crucially, shared doctrine. It's a constant reminder, the document suggests, that this highly specialized role only exists because the Marine Corps provided the foundation, the quality raw material.
It's like saying, beneath the black armor, which we'll definitely get to the heart, is still Marine. The foundation hasn't changed, even if the mission profile has.
Exactly. The armor is a tool, a symbol. The foundation is, as the source implies, granite, unshakable.
Okay, let's move into that transformation process then. Segment 2, the crucible of conversion, the two-tiered selection process.
Crucible.
Yeah. This is where that refinement really happens. It's infamous for its attrition rate, right? People washing out left and right.
Extremely high. But the source is very clear. The goal isn't just to punish people. It's not hazing for hazing's sake.
Right, it's about transformation.
Exactly. Stripping away that reliance on constant command direction, replacing it with, well, total self-sufficiency, the ability to function alone.
And this is where that declaration of lineage becomes really concrete, especially with non-Marines trying to get in.
Absolutely. The ODST Corps needs a universal standard, a shared culture, before the specialized stuff even begins. And they enforce this with strict rules for what they call cross-branch inductees.
Right. Most ODSTs volunteer from the Marine Corps, but the program does accept a few exceptional individuals from other branches.
Yeah, the UNSC Army, Navy Security Forces, and very rarely the source notes like statistically insignificant outliers. from the Air Force.
And this is the crucial bit, they can't just jump the queue, can they? Even if there's some highly decorated officer from another branch.
Absolutely not. This is the mandate, the non-negotiable rule that speaks volumes about how much the ODSTs value that Marine Foundation. Any non-Marine candidate,
Regardless of rank or record.
doesn't matter. Four-star general, doesn't matter. They must first complete the full standard-issue UNSC Marine Corps boot camp, start to finish.
Wow. Okay, but why? Seriously, why put, say, a decorated Army major through basic training again? Learning drill, basic rifle marksmanship, stuff they mastered years ago.
The source gives two main reasons, and they both tie back to the unique demands of ODST operations. First, unity of procedure.
Meaning?
ODSTs often have to operate with zero communication, complete radio silence. In that situation, every trooper needs to instinctively know how the others will react, what protocols they'll follow. You can't have one guy trained in Army doctrine, maybe relying on heavy logistics thinking, working next to a Marine-trained trooper whose entire mindset is self-reliance and rapid maneuver.
Right. In a firefight, under stress, those different doctrinal reflexes could cause fatal hesitation or conflict.
Exactly. The Marine boot camp ensures everyone shares the same fundamental tactical language, the same immediate action drills, the same procedural bedrock, especially in high-stress, low-support scenarios.
Okay, makes sense. Eliminates friction. What's the second reason?
Institutional trust. Remember, ODSTs get a lot of operational freedom. They often function way outside the normal command structure.
Yeah, we established that.
The Marine Corps, as the parent organization, needs absolute certainty that this freedom won't lead to, units going rogue or developing strategic arrogance based on their old branch loyalties.
Ah, I see. So the boot camp acts as a cultural reset.
Precisely. It instills that common Marine Corps culture, that shared understanding of service, discipline, and the hierarchy, even if they'll later operate more independently. It guarantees a universal response mechanism when things go sideways, ensures they're all culturally Marines first.
Okay, so once they've passed that hurdle, whether they were Army, Navy, or already a Marine, then they move on to the actual ODST-specific training.
Immediately. And this next phase is where the refinement gets, well, truly specialized and incredibly demanding. It's all about operating with zero external support.
The source breaks this down, right, into specific training pillars?
Yeah, 5 main pillars, each designed to dismantle reliance and build that self-sufficient operator.
Let's go through them. Pillar 1 has to be the most iconic. Orbital drop operations and shock deployment conditioning.
Right, and this is way more than just learn how to use the drop pod. It's intense physiological and psychological hardening.
How so?
The conditioning involves things like repeated exposure to extreme G-forces, simulating rough atmospheric entries. Sometimes they even simulate pod failures or uncontrolled spins to induce blackout risks.
Okay, that sounds brutal.
The goal, the source emphasizes, is training the body and mind to retain fine motor skills and tactical awareness immediately after that massive shock event of landing. Often, they'll drop trainees into hostile, unknown territory, forcing an instant transition from just surviving the fall to engaging threats.
Physically just debilitating, I imagine. What about the combat training itself, Pillar 2?
Advanced Close Quarters Battle, CQB, and Urban Warfare. This is a core ODST specialty. They're often inserted directly into contested cities or facilities.
High-risk targets, like leadership decapitation or securing critical intel?
Exactly. So the training focuses on immediate, overwhelming violence in tight, complex spaces. Think non-standard building layouts, fighting up and down multiple levels, using specialized breaching tools that regular infantry wouldn't have or be trained on. It's fast, lethal, and requires split-second decision-making.
And that ties into Pillar 3, addressing that self-reliance theme again. Extended field endurance and zero support operations. What does zero support actually mean in practice?
It means exactly what it sounds like. It's the polar opposite of standard military ops, where you expect resupply, medevac, backup.
Right.
Zero support missions in training mean operating for extended periods, often 72 hours or more, with no expectation of getting more ammo, food, medical aid, or extraction. Trainees are pushed through mandated calorie deficits, carrying only what they drop with. They have to rely on scavenging, maybe fieldcraft, basic survival skills, often in really nasty environments. Could be a derelict space station, an irradiated wasteland, a jungle hellhole. The point is to force maximum operational effectiveness while physically and mentally drained, making them rely purely on their training and willpower.
The pressure must be immense, which leads to Pillar 4, tactical insertion navigation and independent objective execution. This sounds more cerebral.
It is. This is about mission command, but on an individual level. It's not just following waypoints on a map. Often, the training involves dropping them into areas where the maps are wrong, the data is corrupted, or nav systems are jammed.
So they have to figure it out on the fly.
Exactly. Using unconventional methods to survey, map, locate their objective, and execute the mission. Crucially, they're trained to identify secondary targets or threats, assess the changing situation, and shift mission priorities on their own without waiting for orders from higher-ups. It's about interpreting the commander's intent, not just the literal last order received.
That's a huge level of trust and autonomy. And the final pillar sounds like the psychological capstone. Psychological conditioning and resistance under isolation.
Yeah, this might be the most vital piece for a force designed to operate alone or in tiny cut-off teams. It's about ensuring they don't just break mentally when completely isolated.
How do they train for that?
The source mentions things like isolation chambers, sensory deprivation exercises, highly realistic simulations where candidates are led to believe their team is dead, the mission is a failure, and they've been abandoned.
Good grief.
The goal isn't just to survive it without going crazy. It's to maintain tactical function, make sound decisions, and retain moral clarity, even when facing apparent total defeat and utter isolation. It ensures they won't fold when they're the last one standing, miles from help, with impossible odds.
It really sounds designed to forge something beyond just a soldier. And the consequences for failing the second phase, this specialized ODST training, particularly for those cross-branch people who already passed Marine boot camp, the source is very clear, right?
Oh yeah, it's a clear, sharp dividing line. If you wash out of the ODST selection phase, that intense second tier we just discussed, you're immediately sent back, RTU'd, return to unit.
Back to the Army, the Navy, wherever you came from.
Exactly. And here's the kicker, the real gatekeeping aspect the source highlights. You are not granted the title of Marine.
Even though you passed the full Marine boot camp.
Correct. You keep the skills you learned, obviously. The source even notes that these washouts often become much higher performers back in their original units because they've had exposure to that advanced training.
Right, the CQB, the endurance stuff.
But they don't get the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. They don't get to call themselves Marines, and they certainly don't get the black armor. The ODST Corps, and by extension the Marines, guards its identity fiercely.
So that two-tiered system guarantees that anyone who does make it through is both culturally grounded as a Marine and operationally honed as a shock trooper.
That's the outcome. The source is absolutely unambiguous on this point. It says, effectively, there's no such thing as an Army ODST or a Navy ODST in function or identity. Once you earn that black armor, that distinction is erased. You are, as the source puts it, Marines first, and shock troopers always.
The culture provides the roots. The specialization provides the reach.
Well put. Isolation and impact built on a shared foundation.
Okay, so we have the Marine Foundation. We have the crucible of training. Now let's dig into the doctrine itself. Segment 3, Doctrine and Distinction, Marine Spirit, ODST Execution.
Right.
We've established that ODST independence isn't rejecting Marine doctrine, but evolving it. How does the source material actually describe this philosophical jump?
It builds directly on core Marine principles. Things like decisive action, thinking critically under fire, and that fundamental rule. Trust your training when the plan goes out the window or orders stop coming.
Standard Marine stuff. Emphasize.
Exactly. But the ODST program takes those principles and, as the source vividly puts it, pushes them beyond their breaking point.
Beyond their breaking point. What does that mean in practice?
It means creating scenarios in training and expecting performance in the field where the standard application of those principles isn't enough, where the structure is gone, communication is zero, support is non-existent. They stress the system to see if the core principle holds up even under total failure conditions.
It's like using the doctrine itself as the ultimate stress test, forcing structural failure to prove the doctrine's resilience when wielded by an individual.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Which brings us to this interesting paradox. The relationship between discipline and chaos. ODSTs are defined by their ability to operate effectively in chaos, totally cut off.
Right. Tactical self-sufficiency.
But the only reason that self-sufficiency doesn't just collapse into panic or individuals running off in different directions is because of that deep, ingrained Marine discipline they all share.
Ah, okay. So if you gave that level of operational freedom to a unit without that foundational discipline?
You'd get disaster, fragmentation, mission failure, probably high casualties.
But give that same freedom to a unit where the internal structure, the adherence to doctrine and procedure, is absolute.
Then that freedom becomes a weapon, a tool for precision action, That's the core insight from Blood and Backbone. The discipline learned in Marine boot camp is the safety net, the framework allowing for effective action in chaos.
It prevents freedom from becoming anarchy.
Exactly. Instead, it becomes what the source calls controlled aggression, the ability to apply violence surgically, effectively, in situations where larger, more structured forces would be paralyzed or ineffective.
So if we were to summarize the functional difference, the Marine Corps taught them to be incredibly effective parts of a larger, well-oiled machine.
High-precision components in a complex system, yes.
The ODST training then teaches them to recognize when the main machine has broken down and to function as their own independent, highly accurate system.
That's a perfect analogy. The source material essentially breaks down the training's dual function like this. The Marines taught them how to fight the fundamentals, the tactics, the teamwork.
Got it.
The ODST Corps then refines that. It teaches them when to fight, where to fight independently, and crucially, how to win alone when the support structure is gone.
That must involve a huge psychological shift for the individual candidate. They have to consciously shed that reliance, that comfort of knowing orders are coming, backup is on the way.
It's arguably the biggest hurdle. The source talks about shedding the security of command dependency, letting go of that safety net emotionally and tactically.
Moving from a mindset of unit cohesion to what?
To a mindset of isolation and impact. That's the doctrinal shift described. The standard Marine approach often favors unity, massing firepower, overwhelming presence. The ODST approach is built around surgical insertion, often alone or in small teams, achieving a specific effect and surviving the isolation.
They stop waiting for structure and start creating it.
Yes, they become the agents of order and mission continuity wherever they land, even if it's miles behind enemy lines with no contact.
And it's this independence, this ability to function in the void that lets them take on missions impossible for regular forces.
It does. They become the strategic failsafe. The force you send in when the line is broken, when comms are down, when you need someone to handle the absolute worst-case tactical scenario immediately.
The source almost frames them as, like, tactical first responders for systemic failure.
That's not a bad way to look at it.
Yeah.
They're not there to prevent the fire, necessarily, but they're the specialized unit designed to go into the heart of it, isolate the critical failure, and contain it before it brings down everything else.
Which brings us neatly to segment 4, the culture of the black isolation and birding.
Right, the visual identity.
The black armor, the skull motifs, the stark mottos. You see an ODST, you know it instantly. And let's be honest, to an outsider, it screams elite. Maybe even arrogant.
That's definitely the common perception, the Helljumpers, the mystique. But this document, Blood and Backbone, it spends significant time trying to dispel that.
How so?
It insists, internally at least, that the iconography isn't meant as a symbol of superiority or elitism. It's intended as a constant visual reminder of isolation and burden.
Isolation and burden? That's a very different framing. So the black armor isn't saying, we're better than you.
No. According to this source, it's saying, we operate alone, in the dark, and we carry the weight of the missions no one else can.
Okay, break that down. The black armor itself.
Functionally, it speaks to stealth, operating unseen, often at night, or in low-light environments. Metaphorically, it represents operating outside the light of regular command and support structures.
And the skull imagery, often seen as aggressive, maybe macabre.
The source interprets it internally not as a boast about killing, but as a memento mori, a reminder of the extreme risks involved, the high probability of death on their missions, and the necessity of accepting that risk, that potential for terminal isolation.
So the whole aesthetic is meant to constantly reinforce the unique, dangerous, and solitary nature of their job. It tells the ODST they stand apart.
Because their missions are apart.
Yeah.
Not because they are inherently above their fellow Marines in the broader Corps. That distinction is critical in the source material.
Let's talk about that role again. Why is this isolation necessary? What specific tasks demand this level of separation and risk acceptance?
They are, as we touched on, the ultimate contingency, the force of last resort deployed under the worst conditions. When conventional comms are gone, when the front line has completely collapsed, or when an objective is so critical or requires such a rapid, high-risk insertion like dropping straight into enemy AA fire that no other unit can realistically attempt it.
They're the ones who have to be willing, as the source says, to fall alone into the fire.
Knowing help isn't coming. That isolation isn't just a hardship, it's their key tactical advantage. It allows them to appear where least expected, strike decisively, and often disappear before a conventional response can be mounted.
But doesn't that create a risk? If they're so operationally isolated, could they become detached from the bigger picture, develop their own siloed objectives?
That's a really important question, and it circles right back to that mandatory Marine boot camp for everyone.
Ah, the cultural indoctrination.
Exactly. Because everyone went through it, they all share the same fundamental understanding of UNSC strategy, Marine Corps doctrine, and the overall commander's intent. Even when they're operating completely alone, their actions are guided by that shared cultural and doctrinal compass,
So they're isolated tactically in the moment.
but never strategically or culturally isolated from the Marine Corps goals. That shared foundation prevents the kind of operational drift you might otherwise expect.
So that independence they have isn't really a license to do whatever they want.
Not at all.
It's actually the highest possible expression of trust from the chain of command.
That's precisely how the source frames it. Independence equals responsibility, not arrogance. It's a trust placed in a very select few, earned through that incredibly demanding selection and refinement process we talked about,
And maintained how?
through relentless self-control, self-discipline, which, again, the source argues, is only possible because of the discipline instilled way back in Marine boot camp. Without that initial Marine character, the entire ODST concept falls apart. It becomes unusable.
So the black armor, the skull, it's not just decoration. It's the uniform symbolizing that weight, the burden of ultimate tactical responsibility.
It signifies the evolution, taking that Marine spirit and refining it for the absolute edge cases. The source sums it up pretty powerfully. They are Marines by spirit, warriors by trade, and survivors by design.
The black armor is just the outward sign of that refinement, the end result of taking baseline strength and honing it for missions that demand immediate, independent, often desperate action.
Exactly. The Marine Corps evolved.
Okay, this has been a really fascinating, detailed look, not just at what the ODSTs are, but how they're forged. How an elite force is built by intensifying, stress testing, the best of an existing, incredibly solid foundation.
Yeah, it's quite a process laid out here.
So if you, our listener, take away just 3 key things from this deep dive today, let them be these. First, that mandatory Marine foundation. It's everything.
Right. It provides the cultural glue, the doctrinal compass that makes their later independence possible and effective. You can't skip it.
Second, that 2-tiered selection process. It's a brutal filter. Remember, everyone goes through Marine boot camp. First, Army, Navy, doesn't matter for that cultural unity. Then they face the ODST-specific crucible, focusing on isolation, self-sufficiency, shock deployment.
And if you fail that second part,
Yeah.
you go home. You keep the skills, sure, but you don't get the title. You're not a Marine. The lineage is protected.
Finally, that operational distinction. It's not about being better soldiers, but differently applied ones. The core Marine discipline is the bedrock that allows ODSTs to operate effectively, to use controlled aggression, when everything else has failed, when comms are dead, leadership is gone, chaos reigns.
Their freedom isn't chaos. It's built on structure. Absolute adherence to internalized doctrine.
If we step back and think about the bigger picture implication here, the sheer effort and resources poured into ensuring everyone goes through Marine cultural immersion first, it really highlights something, doesn't it?
It points to a deep institutional understanding, maybe even a fear. They need absolute certainty that when things are at their worst, when a soldier is totally alone, cut off, probably terrified, their gut reaction, their unthinking response will be doctrinally sound, predictable, aligned.
Prevents panic, prevents fragmentation, ensures operational unity even in total isolation.
Exactly. It's about guaranteeing performance and cohesion under the highest possible stakes.
Okay, so here's the final thought, something for you to chew on. Building on that idea of absolute trust and institutional fear. This whole structure, this mandatory Marine grounding, is designed, as the source says, to ensure unity and prevent internal collapse when facing total operational isolation. But what kind of collapse are they really guarding against? Is it just about preventing tactical mistakes or mission failure? Or does the entire ODST system, rooted in that Marine backbone, implicitly acknowledge and prepare for the most profound failure of all, the potential collapse of the individual human spirit when faced with the absolute crushing burden of total isolation and apparent hopelessness? Something to consider. Until next time on The Deep Dive.